just north of Wallace, Idaho. Something is going on. For a period of time, the Coeur d'Alene Mining District, also known as the Silver Valley, was the largest producer of silver in the world. The area of Burke Canyon was the epicenter of this action. There are undoubtedly still large, undiscovered veins of silver in this sector. During its heyday, the mines of Burke Canyon were a tightly packed economic powerhouse. To call it lawless wouldn't be fair, but it was a chaotic, bulging at the seams, absolutely unforgiving piece of modern American history. Trains ran down the center street of the canyon towns, making other forms of travel sidestep many times per day. Trains even went through the lobby of the Tiger Hotel. Buildings could barely fit on the steep and rocky hillsides of the narrow canyon. Outhouses were constructed to be perched above the river. Fires, explosives, labor wars, avalanches, blizzards, and snow slides were simply part of the risk. But the reward was great for many. The mines in the area went as deep as 9,600 feet. In 1889, the Formosa Vein was discovered, and the originally named Formosa Mine was founded. Being the furthest south in the valley, it was the last discovered and the least worked. Between 1931 and 1974, the now renamed Canyon Silver Mine produced over 100,000 ounces of silver and 2,500 tons of lead. After the last commodity booms, it has been patiently waiting for the next chapter. That's where we bring in Peter Major. Pete began his mining career at age 18 in January 1974. He became hooked on the mine and its history and characters. When the mine had to close in July that same year, Peter vowed he would return, never thinking it would take him 50 years to do so. But he's back, with a personal claim to never abandon Canyon Silver nor Burke Canyon ever again. Leaving the streets of Wallace and heading north towards Burke, I was about to see the latest state of the Canyon Silver Mine and learn of what is possible. It's about time to go after the Formosa Vein once again.
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to Canyon Silver Mine, Burke Canyon, Wallace, Idaho, the world's richest, deepest silver mines. My name's Peter Major. I grew up in this valley from 1960 to 1982. Went to Africa for 43 years, but the last 3-4 years I'm back here reopening Canyon Silver. Now, why did this mine never take off like all the rest above it? 3 times this mine operated. 1890 to 1905, 1927 to 1931, 1966 to 1972, and a little bit from 83 to 85. So it operated 4 times, couldn't stay operating, couldn't stay self-sustaining. What's the reason? Falling metal prices. You can't run a marginal new startup mine with falling metal prices. Not unless you've got the real mother lode vein, which we think Canyon has. We're here to prove it. But we're going to use the latest Star Wars technology that's proven in Africa by a couple of compatriots of mine. We've got to get this mine open so we can get all our sensors inside. We've got to get proper maps. We've got a lot of exploration, a little bit of development, but most of that hard work has been done. Our job is just to get in there and start. And this video is giving you an introduction to the most exciting mine, we think, in America, certainly in northern Idaho. I'm Peter Major, General Manager, President, and Majority Owner, Canyon Silver Mining Incorporated. Over and out. Okay, we're now standing on the original foundations of the original Formosa mill, constructed in 1897, when they only had the small original Formosa vein in number 2 level and number 3. This mill barely ran from 1897 to 1906. And then it burned down just when the mine got going again in 1929. And they built a magnificent mill, state-of-the-art, in 1930. And it only ran for a month and a half in 1931. Silver had fallen to 26 cents an ounce. The Great Depression body slammed mining in the valley here. And that mill stood until it burned down when the mine had started up again in 1968. So there's a bad history of new mills barely running and then burned down here. So we're probably not going to take the chance of building a third mill here. We're going to do sorting and transporting the fines to a proper mill somewhere else that can't burn down. We're looking at some ore samples from the Formosa Vein. That's what this mine was originally called. 1890, they found the Formosa Vein outcropping. What you've got here is called steel galena, very fine grain, which means the silver is much higher content, like 70, 80 ounces a ton, than normal galena, which has silver 30 ounces, and lead would be 60, 70%. So number 2 was founded on the Formosa Vein. Number 3 then came in underneath it by 100 feet. It also mined the Formosa Vein. They built the mill to try and treat all the ore because it was low grade. It had pockets of high grade, but it wasn't enough to sustain the operation with a silver price that was falling continually from 1890 to 1931. So we are going to do a lot of exploration on this Formosa Vein. We're going to see how deep it goes. And does it follow the pattern of a lot of other veins in this valley, that the deeper it goes, the wider and richer it goes. But we've got 4 other veins in our Canyon Silver Mine. If this isn't the mother lode, 4 other possibilities. And very few mines can say they have 4 to 5 veins with at today's silver price are economic. I'm now standing in front of Canyon Silver Formosa number 3 tunnel. This is the main line. This is a tunnel where almost all the production has come out of since 1890. The tunnel extends 3,000 feet heading towards the Golconda. There's a hoist in here at 1,800 feet. The hoist goes down to 5 different levels, and the vein was getting longer on each level, 140, 240, 410, 600, and 800. So the further down the miners went, the longer the vein extended. It had the same grade, very high grade, but not too wide, maybe 6 to 12 inches. Every now and then it would open up. Our interest isn't just what's below this tunnel. Our interest is what is above this tunnel. The original outcrop is 800 feet directly up. We're busy digging out that first discovery tunnel opened in 1890. No one's been in there since 1895 when it caved in. There is 800 feet above the number 3 tunnel and that surface outcrop 800 feet above us. And we believe the vein should be mineable all the way up. We could have 2 or 3 little tunnels in between. So we're not only going down deeper at Canyon Silver, we're going up further. And we're going to use modern technology, drones, transmitters, receivers, and the most modern mathematical formulas by who we think, hope, and pray are the sharpest geophysicists going, Edgar Stetler and his partner, Trevor Grace, out of Pretoria, South Africa. So this big blob has come down a little bit, but I can see the old timber right behind it, the entrance. This is exactly 120 feet inside the Canyon Silver number 3 portal, our main line. What you see here is steel, mesh, rebar, bolts. This was our attempt to try and hold up the sides and the top long enough for us to get timbers in place. It just wouldn't hold. The ground was just too moist and it's just clay turning into mud. But we believe there's a very good chance it'll work now. We were doing this work in June and July and the mountain was still quite wet. We've now had all of August. We're into a hot September. There's a very good chance this mountain is just dry enough that we can remove all this accumulation of muck and steel and start putting timber sets in here like we wanted to 3 months ago. I've had dreams of this place for 50 years. I sat here in '74 saying, I want to bring modern mining and exploration to this. I think that's why God's kept me alive this long. This time we're at Canyon Silver number 2 tunnel. This tunnel was started in 1891 and it had an outcrop just above it. And so they ran a tunnel 100 feet. We call that a crosscut, perpendicular to the grain of the rock. Exactly 100 feet in, they came upon the vein that was outcropping on top. They followed that vein for about 220 feet. Our objective this year was to take out all the rock that's caved in since and map and measure and assay that 220 feet of vein. How rich is it? How much potential does it have to yield economic return? We know how deep it goes because the level below us mined it as well. And it probably goes, no reason it can't go thousands of feet deeper. And we're going to find that out with geophysics and some diamond drills. In the meantime, let me take you in a tunnel that was run in 1891. We did widen the tunnel a bit. It was very small, 4 feet by 5 feet, because they were mining by hand, pounding a drill steel, a chisel, turning it with each blow of the hammer. So we made this large enough to fit the LHD in so we could get equipment and hopefully mine the next 200 feet behind this bulkhead, where the sides have slabbed off, but it was mined in the late 1890s, and it was mined again a little bit in 1927, 1928. And we have found some good samples. This is the vein right above me. It's about 3 feet wide. You don't see any steel glena sticking out, but with each blast, you usually find a piece or two. So we believe it's a solid, low-grade resource. But whether that low grade means 4 ounces of silver and 10% lead or 2 ounce silver, we'll only know by taking some bulk samples and getting them assayed. This is the raise. It was a winze back in 1905. They ran this winze down 60 feet on the vein all the way. And then they stopped. 1906, December, the mine closed. 20 years later, it opened up. And what the new owners did was go on a number 3, and they drove a raise to connect. So they drove a raise from number 3 for 40 feet up, and it connected to this winze that goes 60 feet down. And we're re-equipping it. We're going to have a geologist come in. The vein is exposed for 100 feet solid. We'll be taking samples every 5 feet and seeing, is this economic ore at today's price? These are rock bolts. They hold the rock in place, keeps the mine safe, keeps the people inside safe. Number 1 tunnel, Canyon Silver. Number 1 is actually built much later than number 2 and number 3. We estimate this tunnel was built around 1906. We think it was an attempt to locate the top part of the Formosa Vein. The tunnel goes in 140 feet, little tiny bits of mineralization, but the assays didn't yield anything good. So either the vein is below us or it's offset, which happens a lot, or it's further ahead. But when we get some of the geophysical devices here, if they warrant putting a diamond drill in, we're going to confirm. Does number 1 have the potential to yield ore, or is it just going to be another attempt, failed attempt, to find more ore? Because it's not straight, they were definitely following something. It's a little dirty now, and they would often follow mineralization because that's the first sign that there could be ore. You can imagine pounding chisel after chisel in solid rock, blasting it, hoping each blast is going to yield some ore, like here. You know, we broke out some of this thinking we could see ore, but no, nothing. So Mining is a casino with much worse odds and much higher cost. Man has improved the chances of finding it considerably, and that's what we're going to use. All of man's latest technology and accumulated knowledge from thousands of years. How to locate ore without breaking the bank, without incurring danger, going straight to where the vein is, and not wasting time looking for it, going straight where it's at. This is obviously what the miners were following. This mineralization we see on the lower levels, but that on the lower levels does yield ore. Amazing, the pack rats come all the way to the end. Total darkness. So yeah, almost looks like the vein on number 2. Maybe one more blast would yield something. Who knows?
Following Pete down the narrow passageway that is soaked in the sweat of a century, from every curve down to every nick, it seems to tell a story of hope and desire. In the span of time that this rock has stood unmoved and unchanged, that century is just a flash of light. Just inches deeper on any side of us could be a new flowing ore river, ready to be ridden and navigated by the paddles of progress. The story of the Formosa Vein is being continuously written, and I feel lucky to take my own snapshot of this tale as it rides the tides of time.
Thank you everybody for bearing with me on our sojourn through the history of Formosa and Canyon Silver Mine. I hope every video you see from here on is going to be on our future progress, future development, future excitement. There's a story here that is not finished. It's not even starting to be finished when you compare it to the history of all the mines around it. And we want to take this mine to where it should have been a long time ago, and we're going to do it, especially if we get your help.